This is my understanding of the situation at the present moment. So, the geography of the region. Um, so, the United States, the Americas, Africa, Europe, Asia, the Middle East. Um, Egypt, Jordan, Israel and Palestine, Lebanon, Syria. So, again, Israel/Palestine. This is Gaza, the West Bank, Jerusalem. Um, this should be the Golan Heights, which is disputed between Israel and Lebanon and Syria. And yeah, so that's Israel, and then everything else is Palestine. The, the Ottoman Empire was in control of Palestine from 1500 until World War I. The Ottoman Empire ceased to exist during this period. Arab groups fought with Great Britain and France in exchange for return of their land. However, Great Britain and France secretly decided to divide the Middle East between them. Great Britain was in control of Palestine from World War I until World War II. There was Arab resistance during this period. Zionism is the idea that there should be a Jewish state in Palestine. There were 10-to-1 Arabs to Jews in Palestine during this period. A mass immigration and settler colonial program was instituted to change this. The Holocaust may have been responsible for a part of this mass migration, probably was. There were adherents to Zionism who attempted to collaborate with the Nazis during World War II. Great Britain decided to leave during this period. The UN suggested Palestine be split into two parts, one Arab and one Jewish. Arab groups were against this proposal. Israel declared itself an independent state, but it has no constitution or defined borders. The first Arab-Israeli war ensued in 1948. About 1 million Arabs were forced to leave present-day Israel. This was called the Nakba, or catastrophe. It was and is a case of ethnic cleansing, changing the racial nature of a territory. It has continued to the present day. The bulk of the fighting took place on the Arab side of the suggested split border. There were several documented cases of Zionist massacres of Arab villages. The Second Arab-Israeli War ensued in 1967. Israel annexed Gaza from Egypt and the West Bank from Jordan. Egypt and Jordan have both affirmed Israel as a state. Israel also annexed parts of Syria, Lebanon, and Jerusalem. The Palestinians had established refugee camps in Gaza and the West Bank. Israel has been illegally in military occupation of the Palestinian territories ever since. The occupied Palestinian territories are under martial law. They are not allowed to form their own state, what is called the two-state solution. They are not allowed to participate in the Israeli state, what is called the one-state solution. This is apartheid because of the separate legal status of two peoples under one government, or under a government. The occupied Palestinian territories have also been called ghettos or concentration camps. Yeah, I should say the Holocaust probably precipitated the single largest wave of mass migration of Jewish people to Palestine. Just to be fair, I should correct that point from a moment ago. Israel controls air, sea, and land routes into and out of Gaza. Whoops. There are 1 million illegal Israeli settlements in the West Bank. The Israeli government has constructed partition walls in the West Bank that sort of crisscross and dissect and bisect the West Bank in awkward and unusual ways. The Israeli government has constructed partition walls in the West Bank, that's what I just said. The Israeli government has constructed Jewish-only roads in the West Bank. Palestinians are not able to travel from one side of the West Bank to the other. The Israeli government will not issue construction permits for Arab homes. The Israeli government demolishes Arab homes constructed without permits. Israeli settlers invade Arab homes and farmland and refuse to leave. The Israeli government refuses to protect Arab life and property. The Israeli government protects Israeli settlers' property theft. The UN has tried to deal with this issue, but to no avail. The US vetoes ceasefire resolutions and Palestinian statehood at the UN. Palestinian statehood resolutions at the UN. Jewish Israeli citizens may leave and return to Israel or Palestine with their passports. Arab Israeli citizens may not leave and return to Israel or Palestine with their passports. Intifada means uprising. The first Intifada was in 1987. The second Intifada was in 2000. These were violent and non-violent resistance of Arabs to Israeli occupation. Resistances, I guess I should say. Okay, anyway, Israel has used the Intifadas as an excuse to further annex territory. Israel instigated the Al-Aqsa Mosque uprising by blocking the Muslim corridor in Jerusalem, so they could not access it. Because there's Muslim, Armenian, Christian, and Jewish in the four quarters that give access to Jerusalem. Israel has a stated purpose of taking all the land in Palestine. The only way to do this is through expulsion or extermination. And there are maps of the West Bank and of the Al-Aqsa, or of Jerusalem, I guess I should say, that show all of this. There are also these are also called population transfer or genocide. October 7th happened. There had been hundreds of lynchings of Arabs in the West Bank by Israeli settlers. This happened in the months preceding October 7th. The Israeli military moved forces from Gaza to the West Bank. This is part of the reason Hamas was able to escape Gaza on October 7th. Hamas kidnapped Israeli nationals on October 7th to hold them hostage. This is against international law. However, other Palestinian resistance groups or Gazans may have committed the other crimes. The UN is investigating sex crimes committed that day. However, the Israeli military may have killed Israeli citizens that day as well. Also, part of the civilian casualty figures may be from armed and uniformed militias. Finally, Israel has used the Hannibal Directive previously. The Hannibal Directive is named after a Roman general who committed suicide. The Hannibal Directive gave Israeli soldiers authorization to kill Israeli soldiers held captive. It was a secret policy that was supposedly not being used anymore. However, the Hannibal Directive may cover Israeli civilians in the current conflict. Israel refuses to negotiate for hostages. Israel has killed hostages. Israel has indiscriminately bombed Palestinians. Israel also arrests Palestinians in the West Bank without cause and detains them indefinitely. This could be in part used as collateral in a hostage negotiation. Check my time here. Okay. There are already 70,000 permanently disabled Israeli soldiers from this conflict. There are 5 to 10 Israeli soldiers dying a day. I should also say 100,000 Palestinians have died, 1% of the Gaza population, but not just in Gaza. Other Palestinians have died recently in the West Bank. I think 200 to 300 Palestinians have already died in the last couple of months in the West Bank, although it is not reported in the mainstream news in the West. 70,000 are women and children and non-combatants, civilians. 500,000 Gazans are starving to death as we speak, which is the reason for this video being made today. The news article that I was just looking at. So anyway. Israel cannot afford another war with Hezbollah in Lebanon. The U.S. would certainly have to intervene for Israel to survive. I guess I should also say there's about 80,000 Palestinians and Israelis displaced on either side of that conflict right now as we speak. The U.S. would certainly, okay, let's see. Israel's in a quagmire in Gaza because it cannot leave, but it cannot stay. It cannot leave because there is no peace plan. It cannot stay because it has only eliminated 30% of Hamas tunnels. Israel has bombed the surface. This makes life and movement for Palestinians and the Israeli military hard. However, it does not deal with the tunnel system. Furthermore, Hamas was in part a creation of Israel. Hamas in Gaza is a religious Islamic jihadist organization. The PLO/PA in the West Bank is a secular Arab nationalist organization. They are sworn enemies. The PLO is the Palestinian Liberation Organization, and the PA is the Palestinian Authority. Israel financially funded Hamas from the 1980s to perhaps the present. It did this to prevent the so-called two islands, Gaza and the West Bank, from uniting to create a Palestinian state. Israel prioritized colonization instead of protection of its people. It is also known that the Israeli government knew of a Hamas threat but did not take it seriously before October 7th. There is also internal dissent, turmoil, and strife in Israel today. Economic, political, social, cultural, all that stuff. It kind of like the United States is only probably more serious there, more an existential threat to the continuation of Israel as a country. Israeli Jewish, Orthodox Jewish, and Holocaust survivors are protesting the genocide. They are being beaten and arrested in the U.S. and Israel. If one cares about Israel or the Jewish people, one should criticize the current government. Um, they are in kind of a similar situation to South Africa before apartheid ended, in which case they don't know what to do. Are we going to go for ethnic cleansing, or are we going to end the apartheid state? What do we do? And that's in part why there's been such a push to get Egypt to open its borders and to push all of the Gazans and Palestinians down towards the border to try and get them out. But it has not worked so far. If one cares, see, I said that already. Okay, so Norway, Spain, and Ireland have recently recognized the Palestinian state. The ICC has not yet issued a ruling on the case of Israeli genocide in Palestine. The ICC is the International Criminal Court. UN expert Francesca Albanese has called this a genocide of Palestinians by the Israelis. The Association for Holocaust and Genocide Scholars has issued a letter saying this as well. Last time I checked, it was just some of the members, maybe a majority. I don't think it was the association itself, but I could be wrong, to be fair. The CFA, California Faculty Association, of which I'm a member, has voted and issued a statement saying it is a genocide. Virtually all human rights organizations say this is a genocide. Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, and other relevant experts. I guess Save the Children as well also says Gaza is now the most dangerous place in the world for children. These are legitimate institutions of international law and human rights. They have a duty and an obligation to tell the truth and bear witness to these atrocities. I would make the case this is not a political but a factual issue. There is no other narrative that puts the pieces of the puzzle together in a convincing way. It is like a crime scene with clues that can be gathered to understand what is happening. Experts can explain the case to us and then we can try to understand it. I am not such an expert, but know who the experts are, and I'm trying to understand them. Just because I'm not an expert on this, but just in the social and behavioral sciences, it's not that hard for me to find out quickly, journals and names and books and articles that I should be looking at for a particular topic, because this is, my full-time job. This is all I do, all day, every day. Let's see, something else. Yeah, there is no counter narrative. They'll take shots and say, well, it was not a million people that were displaced during the Nakba. It was really 750,000 or whatever. Or they'll say, the war of independence of Israel and the Arab states was really 1948 and 1949. But I cannot find a counter narrative that's serious that would contradict these facts. Let's see. There is a continuum of genocide, ethnic cleansing, crimes against humanity, and war crimes. It is a legal and scholarly matter as to which this is. However, it is a tragic situation that is certainly not legal or moral. It is against international law for an occupying force to wage war against the occupied. Israel is an occupying force according to international law. Israel should cease the genocide and the occupation and allow for a Palestinian state. This just peace would cause the violence to cease. Israel is engaging in collective punishment, which is illegal according to international law. Collective punishment is holding an entire group responsible for the actions of a few members. Food and aid is purposefully being withheld from Gazan civilians. As we speak, the Biden administration claims to be halting weapons transfers, but it is not. U.S. weapons transfers below a certain dollar amount do not require congressional approval or reporting to the news. It was either New York Times or Washington Post that did do some investigative reporting finally and actually found that out a while back. And then it was on Democracy Now! Too, and Al Jazeera is also another good news source. The U.S. makes many small weapons transfers instead of a few large ones to Israel. The U.S. says Israel, but not Hamas, has signed on to the peace proposal. But in fact, Israel only said they would sign on to it if Hamas did, which they will not. And they will not because there's no guaranteed timeline of when the ceasefire will take place. Anyway, So the narrative is wrong in the news. Basically, yeah, that's what I'm trying to argue here. The PLO/PA has recognized Israel in exchange for a Palestinian state, but is yet to get the Palestinian state. That was in the 90s and the early 2000s. I think the Oslo Accords, and I think during the Clinton administration is when that happened with Yasser Arafat, and I think probably Ariel Sharon, and the whole Camp David peace talks that happened then. The Palestinians can and should resist. Gaza has not been colonized the way the West Bank has. Not that I'm condoning any illegal or immoral activity. This is because violent resistance has been used instead of nonviolent. So if we compare the West Bank and Gaza, Hamas, as it's been labeled as a terrorist group by the United States, maybe served a purpose. October 7th was principally a political and not an ethnic act, though I do not condone it. In Europe in World War II, Jewish persons were an oppressed group. In Palestine today, Israelis are an oppressor group. Israelis are an oppressor group. That is how the balance of power has changed. Half of all Jewish persons do not live in or support Israel or Zionism, just to be clear. All of the authors I read on the matter are Jewish persons and Israeli persons, actually. They're all the dissidents that I read to find out about all this stuff for the most part. Zionism is a political, not a religious ideology. Zionists have tried to force Jewish persons around the world to move to Israel. What is the connection between the Holocaust and the Israel genocide of the Palestinians? Israeli genocide of the Palestinians. Well, an ethnic state is based on race, and a civic state is based on law. Nazi Germany was an ethnic state, and so is Israel, and so is the US for that matter. Israel has used Holocaust memory in its propaganda to try to disguise what is going on. What it is doing, Israel changes the narrative from genocide in Palestine to anti-Semitism in the U.S., and there's a whole branch of McCarthyism in U.S. congressional hearings of university presidents that kind of goes with that. The New York Times does not allow journalists to use words like genocide in stories about Palestine. Norman Finkelstein is a political scientist whose parents were Holocaust survivors. He states that it is a betrayal of the Holocaust legacy to use it to justify a genocide. The human rights institutions and international law that exist today originated in it, as did all of the social science research programs that exist today, I should also say. Anyway, why does the U.S. support Israel? The Israel lobby contributes to election campaigns of members of Congress. The Israel lobby is composed not of Jewish persons but Christian Zionists. They advocate policies that are not conducive to peace for the U.S. or Israel. They usually get the policies they seek. There is oil in the region, and Israel is a strategic ally of the United States. Saudi Arabia is a strategic ally of the U.S. Saudi Arabia is a monarchy, not a democracy, that commits human rights violations. Israel is committing a genocide. The U.S. is paying for it, and the media is lying about it. The U.S. gives billions of dollars a year in military aid to Israel. Celebrities and news talk show hosts do not know or care or are lying about what is happening. Those currently being paid by the U.S. government are biased and have a conflict of interest. Israel does not allow journalists in Gaza, so U.S. news services just read and interview government officials without investigating the reports independently and verifying them. Free speech and academic freedom are suppressed. Protesters are arrested, and experts are usually not interviewed by news services. People on the left and right know this, from Bernie Sanders to John, I'm not sure how to say his name, Mearsheimer. National security experts know this privately, although they may not say it publicly. They cannot buy into their own propaganda because their job is to protect the country. If memory serves, Osama bin Laden listed the Arab-Israeli conflict on his manifesto for 9/11. So, in other words, there could be a national security threat again. And everybody kind of knows that, who knows what they're talking about, I gather. Is there a connection to Black Lives Matter? The West has its knee on Palestine, Palestine's neck. Gaza is collectively crying out that it cannot breathe, but to no avail. The West has always dehumanized the East to justify extraction of resources and people, be it among people with heritage from the Americas, Asia, or Africa. This dehumanizing ideology continues even when the extraction policy has been modified. Part of this dehumanization process is treating women and children as not being so. Trayvon Martin is an example of this, as are the people in Palestine today. A white woman in Texas attempted to drown a 3-year-old Palestinian girl yesterday. She was drunk and shouting racial epithets at the mom. They were sunbathing in the pool in the apartment complex. Anyway, um, there is a perverse logic to this, and it is a natural consequence of what is happening. Foreign hate and crimes lead to domestic hate and crimes. War propaganda during World War II led to Japanese internment in the U.S., for example. Furthermore, so in other words, American tax dollars are going to pay for killing Palestinians in Palestine. Why would an individual American not sort of take matters into their own hands and try to kill a Palestinian American person themselves? I mean, it's a perverse logic, as I say, but sort of a natural consequence of this dehumanization and devaluing of Arab and Muslim life and human life in general. Let's see. And then this last part, I didn't know where to put it. So, furthermore, October 7th may not be the single deadliest incident for Jews since the Holocaust. Operation Condor in Latin America in the 1980s killed 3,000 Jewish communists. And the U.S. and Israel provided aid for that operation, although I'm not sure if we're talking single day or single incidents, or is it a racially motivated hate crime, or is it just a political thing? But anyway, and this has happened on our campus already. The president of our school issued some time and place restrictions for free speech, but faculty and community groups complained that it was not applied to other things like Warrior Day when it's loud and there's a lot of amplification that's used, that it was only being used to try to restrict and suppress pro Palestinian and pro Arab free speech. There was an assault, I understand, of a student verbally and physically by a faculty member at a protest last semester, fall 23. I was not there. Another faculty told me they did try to get this faculty member fired who misbehaved, but they were not able to. So these are not just um, academic things. These are things going on our campus too.